everyone, and welcome back to Rachel's Enchanting Cakes. Now, following on from our last tutorial where I showed you how to decorate this beautiful cake drum, and I will leave a link to that in the description below this video. This cake drum was made to present this beautiful Easter themed cake. Believe it or not, I have only used 4 different piping tips in order to decorate this cake. I'm going to guide you through everything step by step, including how to paint on those beautiful eyes. You can cover your cake in buttercream if you wish, but for the purpose of this content, I chose to cover my cake in fondant. As always, everything you need to know in a simple step-by-step format with some beautiful piping techniques, excellent if you are a beginner baker. Let's make a start. This is my flat layer vanilla sponge cake recipe. I will leave a link to this in the description below the video. No baking belts required, and it will bake you a beautiful 6-inch round, 4-inch deep cake. I always choose to trim the top off of mine. However, due to this being a flat layer sponge, this is not essential. And as you can see, each layer is lovely and deep. When these are sandwiched together, we will have a lovely 4-inch deep cake. Here I have filled a large piping bag with my brilliant white American Buttercream Frosting recipe, which you will find a link to in the description below this video. In order to fill this cake, I'm choosing just to fill it with buttercream. However, if you wanted to fill it with buttercream and jam, you would create a well around the outside, just like I do here, and then fill the centre with your jam. For the purpose of this content, because we're just using buttercream, I'm going to continue to pipe the buttercream in the centre and then take a knife just to smooth it out and make sure it's completely level. Tip: to prevent bulging, simply place the cake in the fridge to allow that buttercream centre to set first. I then simply add the second layer of cake on top, but just look how lovely and deep this is. The next job will be to add a basic crumb coat to the sides and the top in order to allow the fondant something to stick to. I'm going to use what is left in my piping bag first, just to give you an idea of what crumb coating is. This does not need to be a thick layer of buttercream. I simply apply it to the cake, and then using a palette knife, you want to smooth this out. Go all the way around the sides and the top. I then like to refrigerate mine, just in case you have a mistake when you're adding the fondant. If the cake is lovely and cold when you apply the fondant, it will prevent any cake crumbs going into the fondant so that you can roll it out and simply redo it. So don't rush this process. Cover all of the cake and make it lovely and smooth. Today I am using the sugar paste, and I'm going to be using about 600 grams to cover my 6-inch round, 4-inch deep cake. Here I have 2 5mm spacers. I have kneaded the fondant, and I simply roll this out in between the spacers whilst attempting to keep it in a circular shape to avoid too many pleats. One quick tip for you. The sugar paste can be quite difficult to knead until it's warm. If you place it in a clear plastic bag into the microwave on short 10-second bursts, it will warm the sugar paste up for you and allow you to knead it an awful lot easier. It is a beautiful, firm fondant. Simply drape the fondant over your cake and negotiate the pleats before you cut off any excess. I do have a very detailed tutorial on how to crumb coat, fill and cover a cake with fondant on my channel, where you can watch this process being done an awful lot slower. You will find the link to that in the description below the video. Once you have covered your cake, simply take your time with some cake smoothers, going around the sides and the top. Tip: you will notice the hole in the top of the cake. This is to help the air that's trapped gently release from the cake, and it means that I can keep my cake refrigerated without worrying about air bubbles appearing. As the cake settles, there is somewhere for the air to escape. For the eyes, I'm using this sweet stamp set by Amy Cakes. However, they could be done freehand or made from fondant. These are the different eyes available in the set, and I'm choosing to use this particular one. Now, this step wants to be done before your fondant starts to dry. So whilst it's still soft, you simply take each emboss and push it directly into the fondant. I'm trying to keep the eyes level on both sides. I find it easier doing this with my hands rather than a pickup pad, but it keeps it very simple. We can't make a mistake now when we are painting, and just look at how beautiful they look. Using a ready-made edible food paint by Colour Splash, I'm doing this for ease, and a very fine brush, you then simply want to carefully paint the embossed section on the cake. Remember, if you wanted to, you could paint these freehand, which would be a little bit more difficult, or even make them from fondant. These can also be used to emboss buttercream and ganache. Now, Tylo powder will allow you to create modelling paste when added to a small amount of fondant. It just basically means that the fondant's going to set lovely and hard so that you can create things like the rabbit's ears. So just start by kneading a small amount of Tylo powder into some fondant. All I have done here is drawn the shape of an ear directly onto some baking paper. I place this directly on top of my rolled out modelling paste, and you simply just want to cut around this with a sharp knife. My modelling paste is roughly about 5mm thick. I used the same template twice and then simply flipped it over just so that they'd both be at different angles. Now, this template, all I have done is trimmed it down so it's exactly the same shape but smaller. This time I am using 5mm of pink fondant. This one does not need to be modelling paste, simply because it's going to be stuck directly onto the modelling paste, which will support all of the ear. Using some edible glue, simply place it on the back of your pink fondant. Then, to hold all of this together and so it can support itself in the cake, I like to use a lollipop stick. I start by adding this to the modelling paste before adding some more edible glue and placing the pink section on top. You can then neaten this up using a Dresden tool. This will need to be left to set, but for this particular ear, if you just bend the top, it will give that lovely effect. Tip: to add a decorated fondant covered cake directly to a cake drum, refrigerate the cake first. This will prevent damage and allow you to handle it just like I have here. I then place it on the decorated cake drum that is available as a completely free tutorial. You can find the link in the description below the video. Using some edible glue on the base of each ear, simply place these directly into the top of the cake. They will go in with ease and they will stick into place. These have been left overnight just so they set lovely and hard. We need to create one more element for the cake, and that is the nose, just before we start the piping work. Starting with a simple ball shape and pushing it down onto your surface, you can then create this lovely 3D heart. It's very easy to achieve, and using some edible glue, simply place this directly onto your cake. Starting with the Wilton 2D piping tip, and colouring some of the buttercream with this lovely raspberry colour by Rainbow Dust. I'm going to take you through one tip at a time and show you how to pipe. Simply add the tip to a disposable piping bag. I like to place mine over a glass, and then I simply went around the inside with the raspberry colour. Obviously you can use any colour you want. You then want to fill the centre. I'm choosing to fill it with the white buttercream. Again, you can use any colour that you want, but this is how you get a two-toned flower. This part has been done in slow motion. I start by squeezing in the centre and gently go around the outside. Now, just as I come to the top, I'm going to flick away. Moving on, using this lovely pink food gel by Sweet Stamp and one of the patterned piping tips. Now this is the mini rose and it is featured in the content on how to decorate the cake drum, but it's really effective and I've found it's one of the best and easiest to use. The buttercream comes out absolutely beautifully. We're going to start piping this in between the ears just to fill in that gap. So you gently want to squeeze the piping bag, make sure it's touching the fondant properly, and as you pull away, just gently release and it will leave behind these beautiful roses. Now we're going to randomly be placing these all over the cake, and this is just one other flower that's very, very simple to do. I'm going to speed this process up for you now just so that you can view it all. Moving back to the Wilton 2D piping tip, you can also pipe a different sort of flower, the hydrangea. So this is great for both your two-toned rose and a two-toned hydrangea. Simply add these randomly all around the cake and don't forget the sides. Moving on to Wilton piping tip number 32. Now this isn't for a flower, but it's great for filling in the gaps. I am using a peach coloured buttercream using a Rainbow Dust Pro Gel. Again, it's the same buttercream recipe used throughout the whole of this tutorial. You simply want to gently squeeze the piping bag and just pull away. But look at how beautiful and effective it is. So obviously I've speeded parts of this up for you, just so you get the idea. So far we have only used 3 piping tips and I've only got one more to show you. Using piping tip 352, which is a leaf tip, I have half filled my piping bag and I've coloured the buttercream using a leaf green by Wilton. This just adds the finishing touch in between each of your piped flowers. Simply squeeze and gently pull away in order to create that leaf effect. You'll also notice, as mentioned previously, that I've gone down the side of the cake with all those different piping nozzles that we used on the top. And there we have it, our super cute Easter bunny cake using just 4 piping nozzles on the actual cake. And as mentioned, for the cake drum, I did use 1 extra piping nozzle, but it's not completely necessary if you don't have it in your collection. I really do hope I've helped you all again today. Thank you all for your amazing support, and I'll be back soon with an awful lot more new, completely free content.